Hello, everyone. I'm Adam with Demiplane, and thank you for joining me for this week's development update and community Q&A session. We're going to have a pretty quick and brief one today because the team is really under the hood on several things. So we'll have some meteor updates in the next few weeks here. But it is a great time if you have questions, you can ask those. So you can ask those in chat right now by putting the word question in front of the question, and Demibot, our magical robot that crawls Twitch chat, is going to collect all of those for us, and I will get to as many as you have for today. So again, great week for you to ask questions. If you've had something burning in the back of your mind for weeks, for months, for a year, however long it's been, you can ask it today, and I really do ask anything that I can possibly answer. So feel free to ask those questions today, and we'll get to those at the end of the stream. Jumping in, as always, with the lineup, we will have our latest updates, what's upcoming, and then those questions. So for latest, we've got Pathfinder Nexus Early Access. We are working on the content, and we're more or less complete with the content for Dark Archive and Bloodlords here. But those are, of course, we're waiting on a release date for those a little bit later this month. So we're kind of putting the finishing touches on those, but we're going to be ready to go when those are officially released for the digital street date, and really looking forward to that. I am a huge fan of psionics in any version of any game. Telekinesis is my favorite superpower by leaps and bounds, and telepathy is probably a close second. So basically, love psionics, and I love what Dark Archive is going to bring to Pathfinder 2E, and I think you will too. So excited for that one to come out. And then the update on the character engine, so much activity. We're literally meeting multiple times a day with the different pieces of the team, and the team is working really hard on this. Last week I showed a really quick glance at what is going on with our game engine that is going to power everything that's going on with Character Builder and Digital Character Sheet. And I think the biggest thing that I can share today is that we are actually kicking off what in development is called front-end activity. So in a typical website environment, when people are developing, because I'm not going to assume everybody just knows how development works out there, I'll explain it super high level. You typically have back-end and front-end efforts. And so back-end is going to be the things like the data and the architecture and setting up the things that you don't actually see on the screen, but that power what you end up seeing on the screen. And then all of that stuff that you see on the screen is the front end part of that. And so on the front end side, this is the development that is required to take all of that information and architecture and then make it really pretty and look great and polished for people to use out there. And so the significance of this, and the reason that I would bring this up, is we've been doing some front end activity for sure in the last several weeks, but we have really started going in on that in earnest. And that means the significance of that is it means that if we are starting to cut code for things that are happening on the front end of what's going on with Character Builder, Digital Character Sheet, then that means that we are confident that we have all of the pieces that we need and that we don't anticipate significant changes to the flow and to the architecture and to that information that I was talking about coming from the back end. And so typically you don't put the cart before the horse and start doing the front end activity before you have a really, really good idea that everything on the back end is going the way that you want it, because there could be changes and you don't want to spin wheels and waste time, etc. So again, it might seem like there's not much of an update this week, but that is actually a pretty big milestone that we're crossing, that we're starting that effort, and that we're confident that we're in a place where we don't anticipate any major changes with that. Back end effort, don't misunderstand back end effort, and then especially the engine effort that is going to go into making all that, very, very much in progress still. But the main thing is we think that we have cracked the code, and we're seeing the matrix as far as how this is all going to work. And we are starting to build actual screens that you will eventually end up seeing in early access for the character builder and the digital character sheet. So lots and lots of work. I wish I could show you some of the videos that we have flying around where people are, demoing things and everything, but they're just not cleaned up enough yet. But we are very, very excited to see it, and very excited for you to get your hands on it a little later this year. Vampire Nexus early access. We are continuing to work on Chicago by Night and Cults of the Blood Gods. And right now, I got this question this week, I believe, on the forums. Right now, we don't have an ETA for all of the other books that have been released for 5th edition yet. But I can tell you that our internal goal, I typically don't give dates, but I can tell you our internal goal is before the end of this calendar year. And so very, very hopeful that we will get that. And that is also just, to tell you a little bit about myself. I typically take off at least 2 weeks right at the end of the year. This year, I probably going to take off about 3. And so when I'm taking that time off, we'll air quote the time off part of that. Really, the time off for me is that I don't have to go to meetings, but it doesn't mean that I still don't end up doing some things for, the content, the game content here, and for everything that we have going on here at Demiplane, because the truth is, this is a job for me, but it's also my favorite hobby. And so I do enjoy doing that. And that time off for me is just a time where I don't have to be beholden to anyone's schedule but my own. But the reason I'm saying all of that is that, if we get into the end of the year and we're not quite done with some of that vampire content, that's probably going to be my project for then to make sure that we do get that content in there. So that is our goal. We will see if we hit it, but hopefully it's going to happen. And then finally, this is pretty significant. This week we have really kicked off the real effort behind our first Free League game, and we're not quite ready to talk about exactly what that's going to be yet, because as it goes with announcements and how you share information for all of these things, there are many, many moving parts, and I will have more to share on that in the next several weeks. But I did want to let everyone know that we're calling it discovery work here, and this is because our broad team at Demiplane is split into 2, or there is a third one that is I won't talk about right yet, but 2 primary functions, and that is discovery and delivery. And so with the discovery team, I kind of like saying that anyway, Star Trek fan, but for the discovery team, that's the team that I head up. And then for our delivery team, that's the team that one of our co-founders, Travis Frederick, heads up. And so with those teams, the discovery team is concerned with making sure that we make the right thing. And then the delivery team is concerned with making sure we make the thing right. And so that's kind of the prevailing way that we think about things, inside the company here. And so what this means for Free League for the first game here is we have the discovery team is, entering tickets. We are working on configuration. We are identifying what is going to be a listing, what is going to be a primer. We are, looking into the actual InDesign content to figure out how it's going to come alive in the digital reader. We are starting to conceptualize the things that we might need to do in the game engine for the eventual character builder and sheets for these Free League games. So all of that has kicked off, and that discovery team, of course, is a different part of the team than the team that is, currently working. That's very heavy in delivery, but definitely discovery team involvement as well in everything that's going on with the Pathfinder character builder and character sheet. So again, the way that we've got things set up, There's a concept called the Mythic Man Month that you can go Google and look it up. And the idea behind that is if you want to go faster in something, especially software developments where it's kind of applied the most, you can't necessarily add additional people to make that go faster, right? And so for us here at Demiplane, with all the different games that we're supporting, we're staffing a team that is able to kind of, do different pieces at different times. And so this is how all this stuff is happening in parallel. And we're a young company and we are figuring this out for sure. And we're very scrappy in the way that this is happening. But I've been very pleased with how we have been able to multi-thread and do these activities in parallel. So main message there is what's going on with Free League, because of the way that we've structured the company, is not impacting or taking away from what is happening with Pathfinder and the character builder and character sheet. And we've set it up that way very, very intentionally. And so again, we'll have more on what's going on with Free League in the coming weeks. But that effort is a big thing that we have kicked off, and really looking forward to you seeing everything that comes out with Free League. It's no secret that I really, really love Free League games, and can't wait to see them come alive. All right, and then upcoming, the character builder and digital sheet. As I said, we are definitely in the build phase here. I mentioned, some of the front end activity that is going on. We are working toward what we will call an internal alpha. And so we're trying to get to that milestone. And really, that is where we are going to use a working version of the character sheet, which obviously means that the character builder has to work in order to supply that character sheet. So we're working toward that as an internal alpha. And, it might be all of us playing Alchemist or whatever it is, whatever the first bits of data that we set up. But that's kind of where we are, as we're kind of pushing toward that as our next major milestone. And then on Vampire, for the character builder and sheet, we are in the design phase. So we're taking everything that we are learning with Pathfinder and everything that we are applying to the platform itself, and then saying, okay, what is the best character management experience that we can have for Vampire? And then, of course, we are also keeping in mind Hunter as we're doing that for when that Nexus is released later on as well. And then on the game content side, we are going to be catching up the adventure paths. I also believe that is going to happen. Our internal goal is to have that before the end of the calendar year. Could be sooner than that, as I've talked about before. And then I meant to take this out for this week, but it's okay for me to share this again. But it's just a duplicate from last week, which is we are going to long-term be looking at bounties, Pathfinder Society scenarios, and so on, because we've gotten several questions about this. At the end of the day, we want to put as much content as we can that is going to be useful to fans out there. And so we have heard you talking about those and asking about those. And so we do have plans to incorporate them at some point. They're just not on the short or medium term roadmap. Vampire, all those releases I talked about a little bit earlier. And then there is, as I was talking about some of the parallel threading of the team over the last few weeks, we have also been working on another very exciting Nexus that I can't even really hint at or talk about, because I will probably give it away. So I'm going to stop talking, but there is another one that we are working on that we're talking weeks, not months, that we're going to get to be able to talk about as well. But the team is working through that. And finally, we have a new episode of Children of Erte tonight. I don't know if you are caught up or watching that. We are looking into some ways that we can try to provide some recaps, spoiler-filled recaps, that if you haven't jumped on the train, I kind of made a train pun because we started on a train, but yeah, to be able to jump on and figure out exactly what is happening in the show. It has been, what I can say about the show as a player is, I don't know if I have ever been playing D&D and been stuck in a situation that feels as desperate as this currently does for my character. And so they call this transference, when something is going on in the game and it is happening to your character, but then you as a player feel it, and you as a player really connect with it, and it kind of affects you as a player. And so, this is the example that I've heard before is, if some terrible trickster goblin steals everybody's stuff, and it's, running away, and it's going to jump off a cliff, because if transference happened to where, even though the character probably would not want to do that, the player cares so deeply and can't stand that enemy NPC so much that they would be willing to go to great lengths to stop them. That's how transference works. And so I think that with this game, with Children of Errata, what I can say is I've been really, and I didn't even know it was happening. But in the last, few weeks, especially at this point, like, there's this desperation that I, as a player, am starting to feel. And really the only thing that I can liken it to is, I haven't played many of these games, but, some of these survival games out there, The Long Dark is an example of this. If you've ever heard of that one, where you're just, kind of traversing this frozen wasteland to try to eke out a way to survive. And so anyway, what I'm getting at is, if you haven't watched the show, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But I'm ultimately getting at that it's really, the show is doing something really interesting and very different, and very slow burn, that is a really nice counterbalance to some much of the D&D that I've played in the past, that is super overblown, over the top. Your characters are 10 feet tall and bulletproof, and all that. It's a really, really fascinating thing. It's been just such a blast to play. And so I think you will see that with all of the cast as we're playing it. So if you haven't jumped on board there, keep your eyes out soon. We're going to be trying to think through some ways for you to get it caught up with the, I think, 13 or 14 episodes that we've already done. And you can jump on and see what happens next with these characters. But that is tonight, with a new episode at 6 p.m. Pacific. All right, I think that's it. We will get in for questions. So again, if you have questions, great week to ask them, and I will start going through these. All right, Death 25, will the AP line get the player guide content? Got this question in the last couple of weeks, and we were looking into it a little bit more. And really, the counter question we had when I started seeing this pop up was, will the player guide content be helpful? And it looks like the pretty overwhelming answer was yes. And so we do intend to include it at some point. We want to do it in the way that makes the most sense and is the most sustainable for our team, and for people that are wanting to use it out there. And so I'm not trying to be kind of obfuscate anything there. I'm just saying that we haven't exactly figured out how we want to do that. Is that a separate source that lives, occupies the same weight as some of the other books that are in our sources library? Is that something that is connected somehow to the adventure path itself? Is that something that we put in its own section, kind of cordoned off from everything else? So those are the kind of thoughts that we're going into. But I can tell you that we do fully intend to have that player guide content available. And I think that a good target for us having something like that would be, as we are catching up these adventure paths in the first place, we will have that sorted by the time that we can get through that. All right, let's see. Anchor 89, character builder, will it have rule validation? Will it prevent me from selecting options that are not available because of prerequisites or archetype restrictions? Great question. So one of the things, the parts of the update that I gave last week, was the team was working through feat prerequisites. So we had to touch, I think, 2,000 plus feats. and we worked on, and so I think this is a great example of what the discovery team is doing within working within this game engine that we're putting together. So with all of those 2,000 feats that we were going through that have prerequisites in Pathfinder 2E, we categorized the different types of prerequisites, and this was important for it working within the game engine, but it was also important for other purposes that we might use down the line as we, introduce more and more automation for the game. But out of all those 2,000 feats, I think there were maybe a couple of dozen feats that have been, kind of put in a corner for a timeout where they don't necessarily fit the categories that we came up with in the cleanest, best way. And so we're looking into those specifically to figure out how we want to handle them. But this was great news for me, for instance, as the team is communicating all this with me, because it means that we did a really good job of that categorization to have only that many with 2,000 feats that we were going through. And so all of that effort that was happening was all intended to make it to where what you're talking about here, some of this rules validation is going to be possible. And so for that, I do want to talk about a couple of different ways that we think about that. We have soft validation and we have hard validation. For the most part, by default, you're going to see soft validation in the character builder and sheet, especially as we start, because what that means is we are going to do everything that we can to communicate that you are doing something that is out of bounds of the rules as written, hey, you're supposed to have a 13 strength in order to be able to do this thing. But then, we're going to communicate that. We're going to make that really, really clear. But then if a player or a GM decides to allow a player to override that, then they would be able to do that. So we're going to have preferences in place where you're going to be able to toggle whether you're ignoring those prerequisites or not. Because the thing is, we understand that people, and especially in the past life, I learned that people play all sorts of ways. And we can't restrict some of that creativity and some of that, rule bending or anything else that happens, because it is your table, it's your group, it's your game. And so we are going to have it to where those things can be toggled on and off. Great example of hard validation is once we get to Pathfinder Society validation for a character. So in other words, we're going to have, essentially when we get there, we're going to have a badge that would show up on a Pathfinder Nexus character sheet, where if you're at an organized play event, you'd be able to flash that badge, and the game master would have confidence that that character was legal because of that badge that's going to be displayed. But in those cases, we would have hard validation, so you wouldn't be able to turn off the different rules that are imposed on Pathfinder Society characters. So very long-winded way to say that, yes, we are looking at rule validation. Generally, we're going to default that to soft, and we might not cover every single type of rule validation right out of the gate, but we have put a great deal of thought into this, a great deal of effort with the aforementioned, feats that we've been going through and everything else. And we're going to do the best that we can there. And then as people start using the sheet, we will hear the feedback of what is important to continue to include. And but either way, we really want to make sure people have the communication that hey, this is bending a rule, or this isn't the way a rule works. And then you are able to make that choice as to whether you are going to ignore that or not based on the needs of your game. All right, Anchor 89. Gen Con, will Demiplane be there? Any panels, a booth, online or offline? Another great question. And for Gen Con, I think that we have 2 of our team members going, and I am one of those members. So no, we The team is very heads down right now with all this work that we've been talking about. So it is a little early for us to have a coming out party for Gen Con this year. We have a feeling that we're going to have a very big Gen Con next year. But for this year, no formal booth or panels or anything like that. I have several meetings with friends and with partners and people that we're working with. But I will be there. You may see me, walking around somewhere at Gen Con. And if you do, feel free to say hello. I love to meet fans out there who love these games like I do. All right. Ard Arcade, related to con things, now that you're getting started with mini game support, any plans for Demiplane online con? That sounds like a great idea at some point, doesn't it? It really does. I think it's a great idea. We'll see. We'll see. Anchor 89 odds. We will see a Twilight 2000 before end of year 2022. Not good odds at all for Twilight 2000. Hate to burst your bubble there, but Twilight 2000 is probably, I'm going to go ahead and say it's not going to happen before the end of this calendar year. But it is a great game, and we will see what happens in 23. How much awesome sauce does the team consume in a week? Because you guys are, and then there's a little person raising their arms. Awesome. Not a question, but I'll allow it because it's very flattering. Cassius 335. Hope's already got a sling ready, hasn't she? Yeah. So this is referring to, I believe, Miss Robin and Children of Erte. And I am sure that she is going to be very prepared for what happens tonight. Phoenix D. Black, does AP-Catchup prioritize new APs, or will you go chronologically? That's a great question. So I'm going to have to say both to some degree. So what's going to happen is we will always prioritize something that is a new release, because we understand that fans really want to get their hands on things for the street date when those things come out, and so we're going to prioritize that. But there is there are chunks of time in between new releases for those things, and so what it means is that we will be prioritizing chronologically until we get to a point that there is a new release. So good example of this is Bloodlords. We're going to be keeping up with that one as that releases and as that comes out. But then in between that, we will be working on, and I can't remember what the first one is right now. There are so many books that I look at every day. But ultimately with that, we will go chronological until we have until we understand exactly how long it takes us to process one of these books at this stage. And so we understand when we need to pull off of that critical path work of catching everything up chronologically. We know when we need to jump off of that and start working on something to get it out for the street date. So that's going to be the pattern that you'll see until everything's caught up. And then everything will just be the former part of that, where we're just going to keep it caught up as the street dates come. Let's see. Got time for a couple more here. Death 25, is the current rulebook errata up to date? I'm not exactly sure which rulebook for which Nexus you're talking about there, but it is my understanding, unless there has been something that's dropped in the last 24 hours, that for Pathfinder, I know that the core rulebook had a third printing errata update a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago at this point, and we got all of that in place, within a couple of days. It's my understanding that we have everything up to date for Vampire. If that's not the case, we definitely want to hear about it, and we will make those updates very quickly. You can provide feedback on our forums. Is a great place for that. And then we had a rules update for Marvel that happened last week, where everything in the digital playtest rulebook for the Marvel Multiverse RPG is also up to date. So again, long way to say yes, everything should be up to date. If you see anything that is not, we will jump on it very, very quickly if you let us know. Death 25. I will use my birthday wish on Thursday to help you guys get the builder out before my group gets together next weekend. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Happy birthday, but the builder will not be out before next weekend. But I really do think it is going to be worth the wait. All right, I think I'm looking at Demibot is still duplicating things. We did not get a chance to take Demibot in for maintenance, so I think that is all of the questions. I appreciate everyone joining me for this week, and we'll be back here next week, same time, same channel. Join us tonight for a new episode of Children of Erte at 6 p.m. Pacific. Later, Gators.